And thanks for joining us on the Sunday of August. You know, they call these the dog days of summer, but leave it to Memphis to wait for an odd-numbered year in the middle of August for the city's most high-profile campaign for mayor to start taking shape. But that's exactly what's happening. Two of the candidates launching their TV ad campaigns this week, actually three now. My panel will analyze whether the ads hit their mark. We'll also break down some interesting results in DeSoto County this week after Mississippi holds its state primary. And then we'll talk about guns. Tennessee Governor Bill Lee finally calls for that special session of the state legislature about gun safety, but he's getting resistance from the right and the left. And then back to city politics. We talk a lot about the race for Memphis mayor, but some city council races deserve some conversation as well. And my panel has three races they're especially interested in, and we're going to talk about them, or try to, in the short time that we have here together on this Sunday. But first, let me introduce my panel. We have Otis Sanford, ABC24's political analyst. Susan Adler-Thorpe is a political consultant with Thorpe Communications. Funny how that works. And Reverend Keith Norman, the pastor of First Baptist Broad. All right, guys, so glad you're here. We have a candidate profile in the mayor's race that we're airing every week as we get closer and closer to October 5th. This week, we're featuring Sheriff Floyd Bonner, who is one of the favored candidates. Here we go.
This week is Shelby County Sheriff Floyd Bonner.
A safe city is a prosperous city.
Bonner was elected to Shelby County's top law enforcement seat in 2018 as the county's first black sheriff. Now he's running for mayor with his eyes on the city's crime.
Intervention and prevention for juveniles.
The same plan outlined in many of the candidates' campaigns.
We need more police officers, and I think that number should be around 2,500 until we can get those officers hired. The ones that are working in the precincts, we need to get them out on the streets and working into communities, not writing or just responding to calls, talking to the citizens, and finding out what's really going on in our different communities.
Aside from the biggest talk of the town, Bonner sees education as a top priority.
Education, there are going to be some children that are not going to want to go to college, but we've got to show them that there is a path to success, and everyone does not have to go to college to be successful.
But when it comes to success and lack thereof, the operation of the Shelby County Jail is in the spotlight.
Many things that we've taken hits on in the jail, for instance, some of the jail deaths, those detainees never even made it to the jail. For instance, you know, we categorized a jail death where a gentleman was killed. Well, he had a DUI, and he never entered the jail, but he died at the hospital. So I don't think the complete picture has been told about our jail.
This year, there have been 3 deaths in the jail, and in the same time frame last year, there were 7 deaths in the Shelby County Jail. Regardless, Bonner touts his management of the Sheriff's Department as we head towards Election Day.
I have a $193 million budget. I have close to 2,000 employees. So when you look at the next leader of the city, you know, do they have those type of management skills? And I do.
All right, that was Zaria Oates reporting. Otis, I'll start with you. Your impressions from the interview there with Floyd Bonner.
Well, I thought he defended himself, especially on the jail issue, fairly well, because it is true that some of the deaths that have been linked to being jail deaths did not happen in the jail. They did happen in the hospital, and some of those folks never made it to the jail. That is true. I think where he is, I would say, aspirational here is talking about getting the police force up to 2,500. I mean, Jim Strickland has been trying to do that for 8 years, and it's just not working.
I think most of the public's going to feel the same way when they hear that.
Well, of course they are.
I mean, they've relaxed every requirement. They're able to recruit from all over the world if they want to get officers, and they've still not been able to go much higher than 2,000.
Exactly, and so I think that he did a pretty good job of explaining himself and his experience and his management experience in that piece. But I want to see how he holds up against those attacks that his opponents are going to level at him if he ever does a televised debate. And I think he's done He's done some debates, but I don't think they've been televised yet. I want to see him when he goes up against people who are going to be attacking him quite a lot.
We have a televised debate coming up on WKNO. Our friends over there coming up next week. It'll be interesting. So far, he's a no-show. But we'll see if he changes his mind. So, Susan, I want to ask you, and we should mention you're consulting for the J.W. Gibson campaign. But if crime is the #1 issue among voters, it's not so bad to have a sheriff as your guy, as your candidate.
And that's the #1 draw. An aura about Floyd Bonner among the voters is that if he wears a badge and he's in law enforcement, then he should know how to fix the crime issue. I think that's, I think he understands law enforcement, but does he really understand how to tackle crime? And I think it's going to be the albatross on everyone's neck. I think Otis has a really good point, though. How is he going to weather underneath the criticism from his opponents about the jail or not? That look, no matter whether someone who's under arrest by the sheriff's department dies in the hospital or dies in the jail, the statistics go on under the sheriff's department, and the buck stops there. It stops with the sheriff, and he's going to have to own up with it. And he can take all the defensive postures he wants, but the bottom line is that kind of statistic is not going to go away.
Pastor Norman, I think you'd agree with me, in addition to being a sheriff in a high-crime city is a good thing, but also there's that likability factor, and I think Sheriff Bonner just comes across, and he is. We all know him personally. He's a very likable guy.
Sure, very likable, but I would disagree with you.
About?
Because I'm a lifelong Memphian, and one of the things that I've always thought is if crime is high in Memphis, and Memphis is in Shelby County, doesn't the sheriff bear some responsibility to help fight that crime? Memphians have always thought that we didn't get the services that the county is supposed to blanket over us. Law enforcement is one of those services.
Okay.
That's a good point.
Very good point.
Well, let's show you the ads that are starting to pop up now, as we expected was going to happen. We can't get to all of them, but we're going to do 2 of them this week. And let's start with Sheriff Bonner's commercial that's out this week.
He grew up in Orange Mound, followed his father into law enforcement, and rose from an undercover narcotics agent to the sheriff of Shelby County. Floyd Bonner has made history, and he's made a difference. As mayor, he'll make fighting crime his #1 priority. Rebuild our police force, expand community and data-driven policing. Because with 42 years of law enforcement experience, Floyd Bonner is the right man at the right time to lead Memphis. Floyd Bonner, ready on day 1.
All right, Reverend Norman, let me start with you on your reaction to the ad. I want you guys to maybe rate all of these on a scale of 0 to 10, 10 being the best and 0 not so good. But does it hit its mark? Do you think it meets its goal? And that appears to, in this case, introduce the community to him. This is who the sheriff is. And 2, just the overall value of it. Do you think the production value and that kind of thing? What would you give this?
I think we know who the sheriff is, and so we shouldn't be doing introductory ads for a sitting sheriff. I think people should know him. I think there's something personal about it that's missing. I like candidates who talk to me themselves in their own voice, and I want to hear what they have to say. That's why I want you at the debate. That's why I want you to talk to me in the ad. So, it's an average commercial to me.
So 5 or 6?
I'd say 5.
Okay, all right.
Susan might say more.
Susan, what are your thoughts about it?
Well, I think it's a very pleasant ad. I agree with Keith on some of the points, but I think that, yes, the community already does know the sheriff, but it presents him as a nice guy. And it presents him as those of us who do know him as a nice guy. He is. He's a very pleasant fella. But it didn't tell you a whole lot more. I think that one of the things, a point I want to make too, he is the sheriff. We do expect law enforcement knowledge to come from him. He does know law enforcement, but 90% of his budget is running that jail. And that's what makes the criticism that we talked about earlier so important. How does he defend that jail? Because that is 90% of his budget. How would I rate it? I thought it was a pleasant ad. It's a feel-good ad. And I'd give it at least a 7, maybe an 8. It was a nice ad.
I agree with your number there, 7. I think at the end the tagline was ready on day 1, but nothing preceding in the ad really explains what his plan is when it comes to crime or what have you. Otis, what would you?
And that's the point. That's a great point, Richard. And I agree with Keith on this. We didn't need to be introduced to the sheriff. and this mayoral.
If anyone has name recognition, he and Harrington.
He's second to Harrington on name
And
recognition.
that's his other asset.
Right. He should have focused on one issue in that ad, and probably should have been crime, and give some specifics about how he intends to tackle crime in his first ad.
On day one.
On day one.
Mm-hmm.
I don't mind you keeping the day one because other people have used it too, but stay focused on the number one issue that you're running on, which is crime. Don't tell me that you grew up where you grew up, and don't tell me that his father was a great guy. Don't tell me that. We already know that. Right. Focus on that one issue.
And he did mention he just moved to Memphis from Bartlett about 3 weeks ago.
Exactly.
That's okay. That's okay.
A little longer than that, but.
All right. Let's also listen now to and see the ad by Van Turner, the former Shelby County Commissioner and former head of the NAACP here in Memphis.
In the Turner family, it's all about the next generation. I'm Van Turner. On the County Commission, I help pass pre-K and secure funding for the Boys and Girls Clubs. As mayor, we will invest in mentoring programs and community centers to get to the root cause of crime and to prevent crime. And my vision is to provide child care for all kids after age 2.
Van can.
Van can.
Van Turner, the Democrat mayor for Memphis's future.
I was going to say, I'll give that one a 9 or a 10. Susan, I'll start with you first. What do you think?
I like Van's ad. I think it's a good ad. I'd give it an 8 or a 9. I'd go as high as a 9. He introduces himself to many people in the community already know Van. He tells us what he's going to do, what he has done, and what he plans to do. Right. I thought it was a good ad. I think the Van can it's kind of elementary, but it's catchy. And I think it was good to use Steve Mulroy and Sarah Kyle in the ad. So I give it right up there at about 8 or 9.
Notice, no mistake that he mentions he's a Democrat at the end of that ad, even though it's a nonpartisan race.
Absolutely, and I think he needs to do that. I give it a 9 as well. I thought it was a really good ad, and I think it goes to what Keith said earlier. He looked us in the eye and talked to us about what he has done and what he plans to do. And getting those endorsements from Sarah Kyle and Steve Mulroy was a plus. And again, it was in his own voice, as you said, Keith. In his own voice. And I think it's the better ad of the two that we've looked at. I give it a solid 9.
If you don't mind me jumping in here, when he said makes clear that he's a Democrat, that's a clear message to one of his opponents, Paul Young, who voted in the Republican primary in 2016 and another year, and that is going to become an issue in this campaign.
It's a clear message to two of them, really, because there's a lot of crossover vote from the county that comes in a Republican race for the sheriff. So yes, he is distinguishing himself as a Democrat. But I like another part of it. Not only does he deal with crime, he deals with the systemic things that are connected to crime and that come out from crime. So you can't just say, I'm going to fix crime and not say I'm going to fix poverty. And you can't say I'm going to fix crime and not work on the next generation. And that idea of focusing on the next generation and saying, hey, I'm the guy who's been voting along these lines, and I'll do more of that so that we can turn this thing around. Because we know that our crime is coming from a young population right now. And so that focus ties it together. I'm going to stick with the 9 clue right now.
Okay, all right, very good.